Well, hello everyone and welcome to this video. I am the Flying Scotsman and today we are going to be taking a look at Microsoft Windows 10. Windows 10 is a major release of Microsoft's Windows NT line of operating systems. It was a successor to Windows 8.1 and actually signified a backtracking from Microsoft. You see, Windows 8 and 8.1 were more tablet focused, and while you could run them on desktop computers, the experience was a wee bit cumbersome, to say the least. In fact, it was so bad that a cottage industry of start menu replacement programs actually popped up to bring back an old Windows 7 style start menu to Windows 8, whereas Windows 10 actually brought back a start menu that was redesigned and actually a wee bit of a compromise between the Windows 8 start screen and the Windows 7 start menu. But that wasn't the only thing that was significant about Windows 10. See, Windows 10 was not just an operating system you ran on your computer. Microsoft envisioned that Windows 10 would be the operating system that would run on your Windows-enabled smartphone, and it ran on the Xbox as well. So if you had a Windows phone in your pocket, an Xbox under your TV, and a computer at your desk, the chances are that by 2015, or a wee bit later, it would have been running the same version of Windows. Windows 10 introduced unified Windows platform apps, which, again, could run on a variety of different devices. See the Xbox, see the Windows Phone apps, and that ecosystem. But not only that, these unified Windows platform apps could also run in a window, as could the new and improved Microsoft Store. One thing that actually I forgot is that Windows 10 debuted with Microsoft Edge, replacing Microsoft Internet Explorer and ending its 20-year tenure as a browser that would ship by default with Windows. Unlike other versions of Windows, Microsoft Windows 10 received new builds at regular intervals at no cost to end users. However, after 10 years and 14 builds, Windows 10 is ending support on October the 14th, 2025. And in this video, I thought we would go ahead and take a look at a couple of builds of Windows 10. But before we do that, I would like to show you the predecessor to Windows 10. And that is Windows 8.1. So, welcome to Windows 8.1. And for those who have never seen Windows 8.1, believe it or not, this is how it and Windows 8.0 looked when you first signed in. Now, as you can probably see, this was a great departure from what had came before and what would come after. You didn't land on a desktop. Nope, you arrived here instead at a start screen. And what you would see is a bunch of tiles. Now, this is not the first time Microsoft had used this kind of design. This kind of design actually debuted with Windows Phone 7 and was actually codenamed Metro. And any apps that ran in this environment were known as Metro apps. Now, Metro apps could be downloaded from the App Store, but there were a few that came pre-bundled. Now, this VM that I'm using is not actually connected to the internet, so a lot of these apps won't work. But back in the day when Windows 8 was still supported, and if you were online, these widgets would actually flash up with information. And I think even the photos one, if you have any photos downloaded onto your computer, I didn't actually bring any photos into this VM. I believe that would flash up with photographs from your library. If you had calendar appointments, you would have them appear here. If you had an email, I think that probably may appear here, and then contacts and, well, Skype contacts and so on. This was at the this came out about the time Microsoft had bought Skype. So yes, Skype came pre-bundled with Windows. So you could go back to the desktop if you wanted, and there you go. And you had a desktop version of Internet Explorer. Of course, it won't work. Of course, this would be the last version of Internet Explorer, version 11. But we'll have more on that a bit later. But you had your normal files. So there you go. You've get into documents and what have you. So let's go into my documents and my pictures. And yeah, if you could have desktop icons if you wanted. Some programs would install desktop icons. Now, obviously, you can only do so much in the desktop. I mean, obviously, you could start programs if you wanted by going into my computer and navigating to the location of the executable. But what Microsoft actually wanted you to do is go to the start screen. So, yes, you have your tiles, and once again, we actually have a Metro version of Internet Explorer. We can go in there, and yes, you can see actually that the interface is quite a lot bigger than the desktop version, and there's a good reason for that. Windows 8 and 8.1 were designed more for tablets, and yes, there were tablets available. There were tablets that became available around about this time. For example, the Microsoft Surface and the Microsoft Surface RT became available, and they, you could actually just use them with Windows 8 as a tablet. And that's what this was designed for. Now, because Windows 8 was such a breakaway from what had came before, there was helpful tips. So, for example, now we're seeing switching between applications. Move your mouse pointer all the way into the corner and then click to go back to the last app you were using. So the last app I was using was the desktop. Oh, look at that. And we can go back to IE. So we can't really do anything with IE because we're not online. So once again, well, we need to close it. Now, to do so, we can actually just go... We can actually go to the top, and then the pointer turns into a hand arrow, and then you just drag it down the way. Obviously, it's easier to do with your finger. And actually, I believe this worked in Windows 10 as well in tablet mode. But yeah, so you've got your Metro apps. You can launch apps from here. And yes, there was a Microsoft Store, but literally that only gave you access to Metro apps. So what did you do if you wanted to open any regular apps? You see this down arrow, click on it, and there you go. You have access to all of your Metro apps. But then if you keep scrolling, you have access to all of your desktop apps. Now, I did install Microsoft Office 2013 on here just to show you it. So, as you can see, it will crash. Yeah. Yikes. Okay. Right, okay, so that, we're unable to connect right now. Obviously, this is not activated, because I only set up this VM to use for this video, so as soon as this video is over, I'm going to go ahead and destroy it. So, as you can see, we are on the desktop, and, once again, you can launch other apps. So, I don't know, let's launch Microsoft Paint. There we go. So, as you can see, you can just use your apps as normal. If I went then and launched a Metro app, let's say I will launch the calendar. Actually, let's do that. Let's launch the calendar. Switch to a Microsoft account. No, I don't want to do that. Stop that. Okay, so you had to use a Microsoft account. This was kind of the time when a Microsoft account was a thing that was encouraged. It was Microsoft wanted to have this cohesive, sign into any computer and you get all your apps and whatnot. But, yep, you could go between your Metro apps and your Windows apps. But notice how the calendar does not have a button on the taskbar. So if you wanted to go to you could switch between Word and Paint, absolutely fine. But if you wanted to go to your calendar, you needed to do the complicated mouse up to the top of the screen and then go into Metro mode. Now, I'm sure if you wanted to go back to the start screen and open another Metro app, which you can do, how do you think you do it? Well, you can either use the key on the keyboard, and from there, let's go into weather. That's not going to do anything, but okay. Yes, it is. Okay, so apparently with 14 degrees, showers feels like 16. Right. You're viewing sample weather data. Please connect to the internet to see the weather for your town or city. That's fine. Excellent. So, yes, you can go back and forward between your Metro apps, but it'll only let you go to the desktop, not to each individual desktop app. So what we'll do, we'll just... Oh, and you had... you had arrow snap, so you could actually take each app and snap it. So if I wanted weather, then there we go. I've got weather and calendar snapped together. So let's just get rid of that. And there we go. So if I wanted to go back to the start screen from a Metro app, or if I wanted to access settings, I've got to go down to the bottom right, and then you get your charms bar. And from there, as you can see, not the easiest to use, you can search, share. So you can, if you've got something in an app, you can just mouse over. And I think if you're using a tablet, you literally just take your finger and just kind of swipe from the right edge of the screen. Go to your start menu, or you can set up a device. So you can start casting something to a screen, print something off, or project something. Or you can go to settings. Now, from here, you can personalize. You have, this was where the new settings app debuted, actually. Well, Windows 8 and 8.1. So that, was pretty good, but you could personalize your settings. You could connect to Wi-Fi. You could, it was basically most commonly used settings, like, do you want to turn your volume up and down, turn your screen brightness up and down if it supports that. Have a look at your network, check your notifications, or shut down the computer. Why do you have to go to settings? No, you can hide your notifications if you want. You can adjust your keyboard settings, or you can turn your computer off. Now, why should you have to go to settings to power off the computer? I don't know. But you do have a settings screen, which it had some options, but not a lot, actually. There was a lot of options that you still needed the control panel for. Now, that was one of the things that was criticised about Windows 8. Yes, there was this new interface, but it was fragmented. You still needed to go into the old Windows interface, the old control panel, to run a lot of things. And it wasn't actually abundantly plain how you would use Windows 8, because people were used to everything being on the start menu. A lot of people did not like this new start screen. There was a lot of disadvantages. It seemed to be a lot more difficult to get to apps. Things that used to take 1 or 2 clicks now took more mouse clicks. And because of this, a slew of start menu replacement programs cropped up. So things like Start 8 from Stardock, Classic Start, Classic Shell, and there may have been others, but those are the ones that I can think of. And I did actually use Start 8 because I actually decided to use Windows 8.1. I tried Windows 8.0, but could never really get on with it. But Windows 8.1, I actually did use. Now, once I added a start menu, what I actually found was that Windows 8.1 was actually quicker to start up than Windows 7 had been. People actually did say that graphics performance wasn't as good on Windows 8.1 as it was on Windows 7. And certainly, I did get a lower Windows Experience Index score on Windows 8.1 than I had done on 7. And actually, that kind of brings me on to some of the advantages of Windows 7. So first off, you actually still had the old style Windows search. So, you could go in and you could search for something and it would actually search on your computer, and it was as good as it had been in Windows 7 and Windows Vista. And second off, one thing that I did like was it had the old Windows Update application. Now, if I can even blooming find it, that's a brilliant illustration of why Windows 8 wasn't that good. It's like, yeah, it had the old Windows Update program, but can you find it? I don't think so. I definitely don't think so. So, you could go to the old control panel, and then from there, I do believe you could go to Windows Update. And there it is, the old Windows Update program, where you could actually choose which updates you wanted and which ones you didn't. So that was definitely an advantage to Windows 8.1. The old search thing, the old Windows Update. Now, yes, there was a lot of things that Microsoft were doing at the time. I think they wanted your typing and inking data. But again, you could turn a lot of that off. And you didn't have to go in for command line nonsense to make yourself a local account. You could just do it with no questions asked, no answers given. You could make a local account if you wanted one. This is something that in modern day Windows, you just can't do. So there was actually a lot to like about Windows 8.1, which is why, in the end, I ultimately upgraded. I mean, there was a lot that I disliked as well. I liked the start screen. Liked the fact that, had to go to the charms bar. And liked the fact that Virtual PC did not actually work on the operating system. However, like I said, there had been applications that would bring you back the Windows 7 style start menu. And there was even workarounds for Virtual PC to get that to run. And actually, I did manage to get it running. However, sometime in 2014, there was news of a new update that would be coming called Threshold. Now, not only would this allow Metro apps to run in a window on your desktop rather than insisting on being full screen, the update would also bring a start menu to Windows 8 rather than just the start screen. Now, what this was a bit of a compromise between the old Windows 7 style start menu and the new Windows start screen with the app tiles. Because what you would have is your good old-fashioned programs list on the left, and then on the right, you would have tiles. So things like what we've seen before, the weather, your photographs, email potentially. Now, this update never materialized for Windows 8.1. What did happen, however, is all these features that were destined for Threshold became part of a new version of Windows that Microsoft would go on to release in 2015 called Windows 10. And we're going to go and have a look at that right now. But before we do, I suppose we better shut this down. So, how are we going to do it? Well, we're going to mouse over to the bottom right of the screen, go up to Settings, go to Power, and then click Shut Down. So, welcome everyone to Windows 10. Now, this version of Windows 10 might look a wee bit different, and that is because this is the original RTM build that we got. I knew it as Windows 10 build 10240, but I think it was also known as Windows 10 1507. Now, for a long while, that is how the different versions of Windows 10 were known as. A 4-digit number, with the first 2 digits referring to the year and the second 2 digits referring to the month. So we had 1507, 1511, 1607, 1703, and I think, I can't remember if we had a 1709 or not. I think we did. 1803, 1809, and so on and so forth. Until I think we got to the 2020s and we started getting H1 and H2, which referred to half one and half two, you know, the first half of the year, the second half of the year. But what Microsoft, I think, were aiming to do with Windows 10 was they were actually aiming just to have small build, well, kind of smaller builds every year, twice a year, with new features added in. So Windows 10 would be ever changing. And we are going to see that because I am going to actually show the latest build of Windows 10, which actually came out at the end of 2022. So as you can see, we have just booted into Windows 10. Now, just like Windows 7, and unlike Windows 8 and 8.1, you actually land straight at the desktop. So, for users of Windows 7, this will be familiar because you have your recycle bin and any other desktop icons that may have been placed there. You have a start menu. You've got icons for various apps, and then you've got your system tray or notification area. However, there are some differences as well between it and the Windows 7 desktop. Firstly, while we do have a blue E on the taskbar, that does not take you to Internet Explorer. That actually would take you to the very first version of Microsoft Edge. So Microsoft Edge was a brand new browser from Microsoft. It was a departure from Microsoft Internet Explorer and was the start of a new era of web browsers from the Redmond giant. However, when the first version of Microsoft Edge debuted along with Windows 10, And its different, yet still very familiar blue E icon, a lot of people did not seem to receive it very well. A lot of people literally just thought that it was Microsoft Internet Explorer in disguise. And because of this, a lot of people just used it the same way they had used IE. For example, going on and downloading another browser, be that Firefox or Google Chrome or whatever browsers were around at that time. Microsoft Edge would later go on to adopt the Chromium kernel as its kernel of choice. To be honest, I think that has made the browser more popular, along with the fact that the browser now has been around for a number of years. And in fact, you can actually download Microsoft Edge on a number of different platforms, including Linux. Yes, indeed, I have used Microsoft Edge on Linux. Do I use it as my primary browser? No, I do not. But it is very much doable. Of course, Microsoft Edge was not the only new thing to come with Windows 10. Of course, the thing that a lot of people were swapping Windows 8 for was this, the new Start menu. And let me introduce you to it. So, as you can see, you still have your Metro tiles, and you know you can start any one of these programs. So let's go ahead. Let's start the weather app, and as you can see, the weather app is in its own window. Now, once again, we are not online because this build of Windows 10 is no longer supported. But yes, Metro apps, actually now known as Universal Windows Platform apps, now can run in a window. And not only that, they can run alongside regular desktop apps. So how do you get to these regular desktop apps, you might ask? Well, we can go to All Apps, and from here, the left side of the Start menu will list them. Now, I don't have Microsoft Office installed on this VM, but as you can see, we do have a bunch of apps. And yes, Windows does come with some standard Windows apps. Oh yeah, look, there's Internet Explorer. Now, the reason Internet Explorer is there is because Microsoft Edge used a new engine to maintain compatibility with websites that weren't yet optimized for Microsoft Edge. Microsoft offered Internet Explorer. But let's go into Microsoft Paint, and as you can see, you can go between it and Metro apps or UWP apps. The Microsoft Store was also an app that could run in a window, and would later on go on to offer apps that weren't universal Windows apps. So there you have it. That is a bit of window management in Windows 10. Now, you may be wondering, why isn't the title bar coloured? This kind of makes it look like the app isn't in focus. And you would be right, because the original builds of Windows 10 did not support a coloured title bar. They were all white. That is something I never liked about the original build of Windows 10. One thing that you will notice is that you got a search box. Now, unfortunately, this is the first of one of my criticisms of Windows 10 and newer versions of Windows going forward. Because if I wanted to search for a document, you'd think, oh, easy, I'll just go there and I'll just type in a name and it'll bring up the document. No, it doesn't. So let's say I wanted to write a letter. So let's go and write a letter. Dear Ermintrude, I vehemently disagree with your view, as it is too politically charged in a direction that I do not like. Therefore, I request that you rescind your views and improve. Apart from that, I very much appreciate if I could type your tea and cakes at the last meeting. Yours sincerely, Jay. Letter to Ermintrude. Okay, so I've got a letter to Ermintrude, whoever she is. Apparently she has different politics to mine. Let's not go into that. We'll just say she has different politics. So, with that, let's go and try and find it. Letter. Okay, so this has actually found it. So, yeah, no, that's absolutely perfect. However, if I was connected to the internet, it would then go on to burp up a whole bunch of web results at me, which is not the greatest. So I guess if you want Windows 10 search to work, you disconnect from the internet. Yeah. Also, if we go into settings, we have a new control panel now, which is, we still need the old one for some things. But actually, it does bring in a lot more of the settings than the Windows 8 control panel did. And you now have a shiny new Windows Update control panel that also lets you reset Windows 10. So you can go and reset this PC, and then that will go ahead and format it for you. Anyway, the problem with the Windows 10 update is you can't actually select which updates you want to install. So if you know there's an update that's going to cause a problem either with your computer or with another program on your computer, I think you could uninstall it. You had to install it, but you could uninstall it and then it would install itself again. So Microsoft are taking control and agency away from the user. Along, of course, with all of their data logging within Windows itself. And Windows 10 would mark the start of Microsoft starting to demand you sign in with a Microsoft account. So, okay, we have the desktop. Very good, fantastic. We're back with the desktop. However, we did still have these tablet devices around that had came with Windows 8.1. Not just the Microsoft Surface, but things like the Asus Transformer and the Dell Venue and possibly others as well. What would happen to these machines when Windows 10 came around? As indeed it would, because, well, later on in the life of Windows 10, Microsoft started installing it onto PCs without permission. Like, so one day you'd shut off your Windows 7 or Windows 8 computer one evening, and then the next morning you'd wake up and it would be installing Windows 10. Well, Windows 10 did have a tablet mode, and we can turn that on in the new Action Center. Yep, there was a new Action Center with Windows 10. This is why you have this speech bubbly thing here. And from here, you can actually turn on quiet hours. You can go into settings. You can connect to various things. And you can enable tablet mode. So here we are. And this is tablet mode. And as you can possibly see, it looks more like Windows 8. Now, yep, you can still access all your apps. And there we go. Their apps will then, well, those apps that support it will then turn into full screen apps, such as Microsoft Edge, or you've got your Solitaire collection. There we go. I don't think it likes that. Oh no, you can still play. You can still play. That's good. And the gestures, they do kind of work the same, except there's no March Arms bar. But then, obviously, you can go back to desktop mode. Now, this was something that I did use because I did own an Asus Transformer Tab T100HA. Some of you may remember me doing videos on that. I later then upgraded to a Dell Venue 7140, which again was a fantastic tablet. And and both of these machines, they had keyboards that you could dock into. So, you know, once I docked them in to the keyboard, they just acted like little netbooks, in which case I had them in desktop mode. And when I undocked them, they became tablets, and then I had them in tablet mode. In fact, I do believe that both machines could switch dynamically between tablet mode and desktop mode. So yes, you did have a tablet interface for Windows 10 if you wanted it. But here you go. That is the first build of Microsoft Windows 10. So, as you can see, it is a major improvement over Windows 8 and 8.1. You also got access to the Xbox app, I do believe. I think that came with Windows 10. And actually, from there on out, Microsoft started offering certain games that had been previously exclusive to the Xbox. For example, we now, in 2016 at least, we started getting Forza Motorsport and Forza Horizon games on the PC. And I have to tell you, folks, playing those games with Elmo3 and Jack's Variety Channel, formerly known as IBM ThinkPad R51, do you know what? Those are times that I will always look back on fondly, honestly. And, you know, there's more than a small part of me wishes I could go back to like the beginning of 2017 when we would all congregate online and start playing Forza Horizon 3 and racing through Australia and just making up funny races and funny cars and what have you. And, you know, I think all of those memories were brought to us by Windows 10. So, as you know, Windows 10 changed. So the installer for the first build of Windows 10 was a lot like that for Windows 8. But in later builds, you would actually start to see more features, just as Microsoft had promised. For example, your colored title bars, newer versions of Microsoft Edge, and, of course, one of the famous features that actually came rather quickly was Microsoft's answer to Siri and Alexa. And that was something called Cortana. Now, Cortana was a digital assistant. I did try using Cortana for a wee while, and honestly, for very, very easy. However, I did not then use it in the operating system. In fact, I would actually disable it on any computer that I was setting up. So instead of the wee Cortana circle, you'd get a search magnifying glass instead. So like I said, Windows 10 changed quite a lot. So rather than going up through the different builds and seeing small changes, I thought we would just go straight from Windows 10 build 1507 to Windows 10 build 22H2, which would come out 7 years, over 7 years after the original build went public. So as you can see, we are booting into Windows 10 build 22H2. Now, as you can see, there are some differences. For example, you were now able to change your lock screen's background, which is something that you could not do on Windows 10 build 10240. But also, Windows 10, while it had taken 7 years of update or more, it also kind of grew in size to the point where a computer that maybe could have run it in 2015 would struggle in 2022. For example, when I first installed Windows 10 in 2015, my main computer had a hard disk drive as its boot drive. In 2017, I actually saw fit to install my first SSD. And as a result, Windows 10 actually became a lot quicker. And I would actually say that while Windows 10 was still the current version of Windows, it became apparent that you did need an SSD rather than a hard disk drive. Now, as you can see, the desktop is very similar to the 2015 build of Windows 10. However, there are differences. Now, unfortunately, the screen resolution is less than optimal for Windows 10, but this is the only thing that VirtualBox will really give me, plus I have scaling turned on. So, with that, if I go into the start menu, well, first of all, we are connected to the internet, and newer versions of Windows 10 would change your desktop background, and it would set it from something that it had downloaded online. The same goes with your lock screen. Sometimes the lock screen in Windows 10 can actually change the background image from something online. Now, I love this desktop background. I think it's pretty good. But you can obviously set your own should you want to. Windows 10 also grew a bad news button that would tell you about the weather, breaking news, and oh my goodness. Okay, that's not great. This is probably going to demonetize me. Thanks, Microsoft. But Microsoft Edge's icon changed. It actually changed pretty quickly to the bluey greeny swirl icon pretty quickly. It kind of looks Firefox-esque almost. I kind of thought that. And you have Microsoft Copilot. So while Cortana is still there, there is also Microsoft Copilot because, I don't know, in 2022, GPTs kind of became pretty common. Your search box was still there, except now it too would bring up things from the internet, and you'd get a nice wee picture depending on, I don't know. But if we go to the start menu, we see that, yes, there are still tiles, but I don't think any of them are wanting to flash anything really at me. There's no news tile, of course. That is actually at the bottom there. And a lot of programs just, I think the film and TV program, that would end up being deprecated. Cortana's still there if you want it. Now we have a suggested option in the start menu. Microsoft 365 offer. Get TikTok templates. Okay, so we have a 3D viewer. That, I think, was always a thing with Windows 10. It wanted to... it wanted to see if your computer was augmented reality ready. Windows 10 started to get into virtual reality, which was the big thing of the 2010s, or at least one of them. You still had your camera app and your Universal Windows apps, but I think the line between Universal Windows apps and regular desktop apps has kind of been blurred. I mean, sure, there's apps that will run on the Xbox, but between Windows 10 build 1507 or 10240 coming out and today, Windows Phone was sunset. It's no longer a thing. And in fact, Windows 11 actually has support for connecting with an Android phone or an iOS phone. So you can answer phone calls, send and receive text messages, receive push notifications on your desktop. And with Android, I think, there's the option to download photographs from your phone wirelessly. What you did get are some other apps like Paint 3D, which allows you to, draw things in 3D. Quite nifty. Not necessarily something I've ever used. I've been terrible at 3D drawing. Actually, another thing that you will notice is you no longer have to go to all apps on your start menu because all your apps are just there. There's shortcuts to your documents, pictures, and settings. And the settings screen has changed because now it's suggesting you try and sign in. It's got an option to set your web browsing settings to recommended ones, so basically let Microsoft Edge take over everything. It also wants you to sign into a Microsoft account. I mean, Microsoft will push that on you. Honestly, it just wants you to sign in with a Microsoft account. And in fact, with Windows 11, pretty soon, there will be no choice. In fact, Microsoft wants you to believe that there is no choice at present. So yes, I hope you enjoy being unable to use your computer if your internet connection goes down. Yes, folks, that is actually a thing. If you're signed in using a Microsoft account and you have no internet, because it actually sends out to an internet server to authenticate you onto your local computer, if it can't get that connection, you lose access. You essentially become banned from your own computer, disallowed from using your own computer. So, as you can see, Microsoft Edge has changed, and it, like I said, it's now based on Chromium. Again, there's that Copilot button, and we have the Microsoft Store, which apparently needs updating. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to have to wait for this to actually do what it's got to do. That's please wait a moment, and then you'll be able to reopen it. Thanks. Okay, why is that taking so long? Going back to Windows though. Oh, there we go. So here we go, the new Microsoft Store. Well, I say new. You can go in, you can download games. You can download desktop apps as well. Oh, look, there's Hill Climb Racing. I have that on my iPad. So you can download WhatsApp. You can download Adobe Acrobat Reader DC. So look, there we go. Let's go ahead and get that installed. Look at that. It's actually installing a desktop app. And just like with other builds of Windows, look, there we go. We've got calendar. Just like with other builds of Windows 10, yes, you can run universal Windows apps. Oh, look, there we go. It's a newer version of the Microsoft Store. And these apps will just run in a window. Oh yes, you also had the Microsoft Game Bar. So, yeah, if I actually go into a game, then I can go into the game bar, and I can take screenshots, or I can go to the controller bar, or have a look at performance. Nice. Oh, look, and there's ChatGPT. So, as you can see there... Oh. Can you? Okay. As you can see there, this has completely failed to install. We're aware of the issue, working to fix it. Please try again later. Well, that's nice. So let's install ChatGPT instead. Let's be all nice and modern and embrace AI, because it's post-2022, so we're going to go and do that. And while we're doing that, we'll close out of some apps here. So this is Windows 10 build 22H2. Now, this build obviously came out after Windows 11 came out, so it was the final build for Windows 10, because when Windows 11 came out in 2021, it had some, well, what I believe to be arbitrary system requirements. And the reason I believe they were arbitrary is because, yes, oh look, there we go. Now we've got a standard desktop app installed on Windows 10. Look, here is ChatGPT, and we can log in and we can chat to it. Isn't that exciting? So you needed a TPM 2.0 module, a trusted platform module that would help to... It's not needed for encryption, but it certainly helps to provide an encryption key, a decryption key, to let you access what you're encrypting. And it is, quite... Well, it's quite secure, and, I can kind of understand that. What I don't understand is that Microsoft then put a lock on what CPUs you could use. So, for example, you couldn't use a Ryzen 1st Gen, even if you had a TPM 2.0 module. You couldn't use a 7th Gen Intel CPU. It had to be 8th Gen or higher. Now, when Windows 10 first came out, these things were still quite new. Kaby Lake had came out... Kaby Lake had came out in 2016, so it was 5 years old. But considering Windows 10 would run on systems designed for Windows Vista, a lot of people felt that this move was just going to cause a lot of e-waste. Now, in 2025, I guess that hopefully systems that were Coffee Lake or newer, or that use second gen Ryzen CPUs or newer, would have become old enough and cheap enough that you could actually pick one up quite reasonably and go and, install Windows 11. However, all these older systems, a lot of them are still very much usable. And a lot of people don't want to go to Windows 11 for a number of reasons. So, artificially locking older systems out, I think, is just another way for people... Well, it's just another reason for people not to want to go into Windows 11. Actually, when Windows 11 came out in 2021 with these system requirements, I did not feel that at that point it was the right time for that to happen, because a lot of people would not have been able to upgrade their computers due to the ongoing chip shortage caused by COVID-19. It was quite difficult to get hold of a lot of computer components, and it was difficult to get hold of a lot of computers. Yes, it could be done, but it wasn't, it wasn't the easiest thing in the world to do. However, in 2021, the choice to stay on Windows 10 was still very much a legitimate choice to make. However, now Windows 10 is going out of support. Now, Windows 11 does have a lot of problems. There's a lot of people that have said it is not that stable. In fact, I myself have noticed a lot of quirks with the operating system, but then I noticed a lot of quirks with Windows 10 as well. Microsoft are always trying to collect data, and they're continuing to try and turn Windows into a piece of adware. I mean, again, you can see that even in Windows 10. Look at this. Suggested apps. Why do we need this? And, of course, every so often when you start a Windows 10 or 11 computer, Microsoft will bring up a wizard asking you to finish setting up Windows. So it'll be, if you're not signed into a Microsoft account, do that. And while you're at it, buy Microsoft 365, buy some OneDrive Plus. And there's also the matter, there is the matter of the Microsoft account. Yes, you can go into the command line during the out-of-the-box experience and, bypass it. However, Microsoft have put out some new builds of the upcoming version of Windows 11, 25H2, where that is no longer a thing, and instead you'll need to use a registry hack to get around the Microsoft account requirement. I was absolutely appalled when I was building a computer in 2023. In December 2023, I was building a computer that Windows 11 did not have the drivers for the onboard Wi-Fi, and because of that, it would not let me set up the machine. It would not let me into that computer. And I'm sorry, but to need the internet to access your own computer is just obnoxious. And it's not something that I like. And to be honest, I don't think the quality control is there either. So while Windows 10 did give us some great memories and was a pretty good operating system for the time. In fact, I was very happy when it came out and was finally going to do away with the stupid start screen from Windows 8.1. Now, originally, I think Microsoft were hoping that Windows 10 would be the last version of Windows that they make, in that it would just become Windows and would then start just receive updates every 6 months or so to keep it current. But we all know what happened. In the summer of 2021, Windows 11 was leaked online, so Microsoft actually made it available to beta testers. I had a shot of it. It came out in October, and oh yes, and one last thing that you could finally do with Windows 10. Who remembers being able to do that? You resize the taskbar. Blimmin' heck, I have never done this, which is probably why the functionality was taken away in Windows 11. But essentially, Windows 10 has been replaced by Windows 11. Now, there are certain circumstances in which you can get extended support. You can buy an extended support package. I think in the EU, if you do sign in with a Microsoft account, you can get extended support. However, for the rest of us, when October the 14th comes, there will be no longer any updates for Windows 10, and it will be advised that we upgrade to Windows 11 and say goodbye to Windows 10. And that's what we are going to do now. So thank you all for watching this video, and please do join me for my next one. Cheery bye. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. You could also subscribe to the channel and hit the wee bell icon to be notified when I have published a new video. But until then, please feel free to check out some of my previous videos.